free market environmentalism is best illustrated by. Now, if we look at the options, we'll realize that these are references outside the passage. So this is a best example type of question. We see the reference to free market environmentalism here. It is stated, free market environmentalism, the philosophy that TNCs brought to Rio through the Business Council on Sustainable Development, has become the order of the day, uniting Southern and Northern leaders alike. There's a reference to Southern and Northern leaders in the fourth paragraph. We don't need to check that. That is not relevant to this particular question. We see that there has been a benefit. The benefit has been, it has become the order of the day, uniting Southern and Northern leaders alike. So there is one thing, there's at least one aspect on which free market environmentalism, this philosophy has benefited someone. But this philosophy was brought to Rio by the TNCs. The TNCs are mentioned here, and we see that TNC, they represent the corporate sector, and they do have vested interests. We see multiple references to that. The corporate sector, which throughout the UNCED process enjoyed special access to the Secretariat, also got what it wanted. So basically they were pursuing their own interests, but there was a benefit to others as well. The final documents not only treated TNCs with kid gloves, but extolled them as the key actors in the battle to save the planet. We see here, the net outcome was to minimize change to the status quo, an outcome that was inevitable from the outset of the UNCED process 3 years ago. Unwilling to question the desirability of economic growth, the market economy, or the development process itself, UNCED never had a chance of addressing the real problems of environment and development. So we realize that that is the key aspect of the free market environmentalism, the philosophy of free market environmentalism, is that it was presented by the TNCs, brought in by the TNCs to fulfill their own objectives, but it had some benefit to others as well, as referenced by this statement. So let's look at the options. Option A says, a mill owner who buys his neighbor's mills to run them more efficiently, foregoing profit. We might have agreed with the first part of this, but just these two words, foregoing profit, not pursuing personal profit. This refers to altruism. Why is this mill owner doing anything that is suggested here? Not because he wants to make a profit from it, not because he wants to gain from it, but rather he is foregoing profit. He or she, let's say, is foregoing profits in order to run the mills, the neighbors' mills more efficiently. So this refers to altruism. This refers to actually a selfless act, but that is not true, because the TNCs were pursuing something which was in their vested interests. So this is not a very good illustration or an example. A is out. Option B says, a peasant who gets government and corporate approved GM seeds to maximize yield and reduce pest and weed destruction. Again, this is benefit to one person only, the peasant who gets government and corporate approved GM seeds to maximize yield and reduce pest and weed destruction. Here, the one subject is the peasant. The peasant is being benefited. So there's benefit for one. The other subject, if at all there is one, is the government, but there's no mention of any benefit to the government, any direct mention. So is this the government and corporate approved GM seeds also doesn't necessarily talk about either the government or the corporate sector, but as in gets from who, that is not given. But if these are considered as subjects as well, if we consider the government and the corporate sector subjects, then is that subject benefited in any way by giving the peasant GM seeds, that is genetically modified seeds? There's absolutely no reference to that. So we don't get a resultant benefit to anyone. There's only one person, one party, one could call it, being benefited, which is the peasant. So again, not a very good example. B is out. Option C tells us, An entrepreneur who buys rural plots to generate huge personal profit by modern enhanced production methods and technology. Yet again, we see only the aspect of the entrepreneur being benefited to generate huge personal profit. Personal profit is talking about the entrepreneur's personal profit. It is not talking about benefit or profit to anyone else. So the aspect of resultant benefit doesn't work out, is not included here. So C is out. Then D says, a socially conscious capitalist who extends loans to impoverished peasants for the use of his GM seeds and fertilizers to ensure a symbiotic profit for both. Now, while this is somewhat imperfect because it does present this socially conscious capitalist in a positive light, the passage generally speaks negatively of the TNCs. It doesn't present them in a positive connotation, but at least we get the aspect of to ensure a symbiotic profit for both. So the socially conscious capitalist is profiting, but also the impoverished peasants are profiting. So we have definitely the capitalist likened to, compared to the TNCs who had their own agenda, but they also benefited the peasants, which are compared to the southern and northern leaders. So this is close enough. Other than the difference in connotation, the difference in the tone of the statement or the argument, this is quite similar to what is mentioned in the passage. Hence, D can be qualified. That is the correct answer.